The Seventh Tower by Garth Nix. Book 5, Into Battle. Chapter 26. Milla danced a dance of death, the talon's whip of light weaving around her like a razor-sharp ribbon. She mowed through the ranks of attacking spirit shadows like a merwin through a half-asleep herd of Reska. As the talon cut, sliced, and choked through the spirit shadows, it also deflected the rays of light and other magics that were sent against the war chief of the Ice Carls. But quick as it was, faster than a flea might, the talon could not fully deflect every red ray or blue burst the Chosen were firing from their makeshift barrier higher up the wide reaches of the old grand stair. Red light struck, and Milla was lightly burned across both arms, but she did not fall back until the spirit shadows were in full retreat. Even then, the talon tried to lash out behind Milla, and she only just managed to turn it aside as Audras grabbed her and dragged her back behind the Ice Carl's own wall of partially reflective crystal panels, stacked against a breastwork of barrels, boxes, and anything else they could drag up from the underfolk level at the end of the stair. As Audras dragged Milla away, several shield maidens paused in their own retreat to raise their mirror shields to guard the war chief. They did it not a moment too soon, as more red rays and an indigo cutter zapped down, blowing chips of stone out of the steps as they were deflected by the shields. Momentarily safe behind the barricade, Milla and Audras hunkered down as about a dozen hunters stood up and hurled their glowing spears at the last few spirit shadows. Sailsin crept up to them, her head just below the level of the barricade. More red rays crisscrossed overhead as she approached. "Well done, war chief," exclaimed the old shield mother. "If only the cowards themselves would attack, instead of sending their shadows. Then we would show them." Milla set her teeth for a moment as she began to feel the pain from her burns. "They show good sense," she said grimly. "The spirit shadows do not die easily, and their chosen masters will survive their pain. I wish that we had spirit shadows to die for us." She looked around. They had been fighting on the stair for almost a chosen hour by her sunstone, and there had been many deaths and many wounded among the Ice Carls. "There is no honor here," Milla added. It was not like the old stories and legends. "There is only foul and unpleasant work that must be done." She saw Mullen tending to a dying shield maiden, and crawled down to her. "What news of the main host?" asked Milla. Mullen shook her head. Her hands were shaking, Milla saw. I don't know," Mullen whispered. "I can't hear them in the middle of this. I can't hear them." "It doesn't matter," Milla calmed her. "Just do what you can for the wounded. I've sent runners back. They will bring up the others when they come." When they come, Milla thought. She hoped it would be soon enough. Even with the talon, there was a limit to how many spirit shadows they could stop. There had been 6 assaults so far down the stairs. Each time there had been more spirit shadows, and each time they had been barely thrown back. Milla looked across the end of the barricade, where there was a considerable space after the main body of defenders. Everywhere else the line was packed tight with shield maidens and hunters, staying low until they had to confront the next attack. The reason for the space was immediately clear. Jarek was there, staring through a slight gap between 2 panes of crystal. His vast, blue-stained chest was rising and falling like a bellows, and he held his great chain of gold metal taut between 2 huge fists. Kira was stroking the back of his neck and whispering in his ear. She had managed to get him to come back after each attack, a feat Milla would have believed impossible after seeing his intense rage and the carnage he wreaked among the spirit shadows with his chain. The golden metal, like certain types of light, was all too solid to spirit shadows. As Milla watched, a red ray drilled through the gap and struck Jarek on the chest. Anyone else would have been killed instantly, but his skin, soaked in Norworm blood, reflected the ray. It hit a barrel and sliced away a long wooden splinter. The splinter flew through the air with an awful whir and went straight into Kira. The shield maiden fell without a sound, crumpled over the next lower step. Milla ran to her, as fast as she could without exposing herself. Mullen followed, her slim medicine pack in hand. Even before they got there, they knew nothing could be done. The splinter was as long as an arrow, and by terrible mischance, it had struck Kira under the arm, where she had no armor. Jarek looked down at his partner, and touched her gently on the back. When she did not move, he rolled her over. Milla and Mullen froze, seeing the madness in his eyes. Jarek put Kier down again. His head went back, and he gave the most terrible howl anyone had ever heard, Icecarl or Chosen. It was louder and fiercer than a Merwin's screech, deeper than the distant rumble of the Selski. Time stood still. Even the Chosen stopped firing red rays over the barricade. Jarek rose up and smashed his way through the barricade, whirling the great chain above his head. The awful howl continued, far longer than anyone's lungs could have sustained it. Red rays flashed and played across his body, but he did not fall back. A blue burst broke over him, but he did not falter. Milla didn't need to think twice. "Attack!" she yelled. "For Kier! Attack!" In an instant, every Icecarl was up, including many wounded. The barricade was pushed aside or jumped or bowled through as every shield maiden and hunter stormed up the stairs in the wake of the wilder Jarek's chain and War Chief Milla's terrible talon.